back with another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies.
Good morning.
And today, I know we always say we have a special guest, but we have another special guest, and we haven't done an employee spotlight yet. We're going to start them, and I guess this is not really an employee spotlight, but we've got our CEO with us today, Harold Cooper, and we thought it'd be a good time for, I guess, the employees and I guess potential employees. We've been talking a little bit with Brian Scheid, the Director of Human Resources, about, you know, how to plug into Premier Ag and how to get started. And also, we thought it'd be kind of neat to have folks hear what a career looks like in the cooperative system and a little bit about Premier Ag's history and how that has impacted our CEO today. So our CEO, Harold Cooper, I'm going to just pass it over to you and let you tell the story.
All right, I will. And thanks for having me on. I would say, and sometimes we all understand and hear how first impressions are important. And I can remember when I was a freshman at Purdue, I paid my own way through school, so I needed to find employment. I got an internship right here in Seymour with what was then Jackson County Co-op. And that summer, well, actually over 5 summers, I was able to learn a little bit more about feed, grain, crops, energy, and those kinds of things. So I had a very broad experience as an intern. That first summer, I was a truck driver in crops, and I can remember being in a tender truck, and there was one other driver. He pulled in behind me, and out of the cab came this guy that was 5'7", 5'8" in height. He was clearly retired age, walking with a limp. And I felt sorry for him because he clearly is a young man's physical game, and someone that was forced into that situation was just troubling. And I got to talking to him, found out his name was Cliff Osterman. He was actually had just retired as the manager. And he came back just because he enjoyed it, and he enjoyed what he did. And in that summer, as I spent time with Cliff, we sat on 5-gallon buckets quite a bit that summer. He told me what a co-op was and what it meant and the profound impact it can have and how it can be rewarding as not only a job, but as a career. It's just something that you feel like I've made a difference. And I got to thinking one time, because he started in 1930. This company was formed in 1927. He started driving a fuel truck himself in 1930. And when we shook hands, basically the entire life of the cooperative system in Indiana is in that handshake. And it's just amazing to me what the difference is, where we have come from, what we are today. I think the importance we do offer. I mean, farmers tend to be a very independent-minded, very strong personality group of people. And for them to join and band together and do things that are expressed through us and something that they own, something that they can control, and to make sure their voice stays in the marketplace, those are the things that Cliff, in my mind, was trying to give me a sense of that first summer that I have found true over a 40-plus year career now.
Well, you are a leader that you've been quoted a lot. We know that several things that you've said have been quoted through. I mean, we've seen it in magazines, and the things that you've put together and the story that you've been able to build is, and there's not many in your position in the state of Indiana. There's 12 or 13. And so that becomes somewhat of an elite club. And it also becomes an elite group of people who have spent entire careers in this business. It doesn't seem like any of those just slid into this from another entity, which is just incredible. And from my standpoint, if you like history at all, people who have spent their entire careers doing this to eventually end up manage it and help to guide that on for next generations. It's just profound to be around you guys and hear those stories, and I just think it's just incredible. So, and the co-op system is such a great story to listen to anyway. So yeah, and so you might tell us what year that was that you started, and
I was waiting for that too. Yeah, I got 1930 down, but I don't know if that was that.
I wouldn't put his name next to that one. I made the comment the other day. I used the word vintage and 1982 in the same sentence.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it didn't go well.
Well, I started in 1978 in that first summer, and I interned again for actually 5 semesters down here, so full-time in 1980. And I can remember on the other side of this real quickly, my counselor at Purdue was Dave Downey, Dr. Downey. And as I considered career choices and was visiting with him, I mentioned possibly co-op as one of those. He says, well, maybe for 3 years, but you'll never want to stay with a co-op. You'll want to be challenged with a career more. And I've found nothing. In fact, he went back and retracted the remark later in my career. But I have found this to be a company, and again, just it's more than a job, a career that is very rewarding. In my case, again, I started out driving a Big A. I started out delivering feed and those kinds of things. In fact, the first shot at management I had, I can still remember the last liquid application job I did.
I can too. We all remember that one.
Well, when I got back to when I was driving back into the plant lot on the driveway, I was looking at what looked like a little bit of a cloud on our lot. Unbeknownst to me, there was another driver that was looking at the same cloud that was driving a pickup truck around. When I realized that both of us were looking at the same thing, it was because I had stopped with my wheel up in the air. My front wheel of the Big A was sitting on his windshield. Oh. And he's giving, his hands are up like he's going to stop it from going through the windshield. I think at that day they said, we like this kid, but we don't think he's going to be anything but management.
Got to get him from behind the wheel.
Yeah, we got to get him someplace where he's not putting us at risk. But I have found through my 40 plus years, and I hope others do too, we're a fairly flat organization. But for those that show ambition, for those that care and really accept responsibility, I think there's places to increase your role with us. And it's always fun for me to see employees that first start out maybe in their very first entry-level position for us continue to, throughout their career, to accept more and more responsibility. I think everyone at this table has had that happen. And that's a fun experience for me to share with others. And for those that are considering us as an employer, to say, you really do care about your own, and you're willing to give a lot of responsibility to folks and let them learn with you how to apply their skills and develop their skills as they go on the job. So that's been great for me. And it is fun to sit there and say, I've been with one company for over 40 years.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mr. Downey retracted that statement. Even with interns today, I know the rule of thumb is to do a different summer. Don't never stay with the same company twice. And I'm like, if Premier Ag, if that looks like your home, I'd do 2 summers in a row, because you come in a different type of employee. You know our culture a whole lot better. You already know the geography and the people and how we go to market.
Yep, I think that we want to talk about through your career. I know there's some funny stories. I know there's some transitional stories in the co-op system. What do you see in Indiana cooperatives that sets it apart from other cooperatives? I think we know consolidation is pretty big in Indiana. You might talk about when did that start? When did this consolidation kind of trigger? Thoughts on that, and how your mindset maybe has changed from that, because you're very strong in the federated co-op system.
I am. I'm very strong with the notion, again, of farmer-owned, farmer-controlled, and that it be local ownership and local expression. And for me, it already started just a little bit, but when I started in 1980 full-time, there were still 77 co-ops, what were called member co-ops, county co-ops back then, across 92 counties in the state of Indiana. That's effectively 5 today. I think there's still 9 legal entities, but we've seen a tremendous amount of consolidation through my career as far as that goes. But that has been a way for our system to still see an expression of getting a farmer's voice in every market, every geography. Brian, you and I just recently in our boards decided to merge White River and Premier. And that became a strong statement to allow us to keep the wherewithal and the means and the capability to compete against anyone. I mean, the folks that are also in our space, like a Nutrien, they have 70% of North American fertilizer manufacturing. They have over 25% of the retail in the United States. That, to me, borders on monopoly. And so how does a farmer put themselves in position that they feel like there is some control, some influence that allows them to have a voice and make sure that they're being treated fairly, that they're being considered in decisions. I have to report to 12 farmers every month and hold myself and this organization to account that I took their needs seriously. And if I don't, they'll find somebody else. I think that's a great thing. I think that makes the entire marketplace better. I think that forces all of us, whether you're a cooperative or not, to really sit there and consider the farmer's interests first as you decide how you're going to attain your own goals, whether those be growth, profitability, return to shareholder, or whatever it is. And so it's been extremely important. I think it's been fun for me to see how much this company has changed. When we started in 1927, I mean, if you think about that, 1927, we'd just come out of a First World War that ended in 1919. We'd had the Spanish flu, which was much more devastating to our country than what COVID was that we just experienced. And what were called the Roaring 20s, in rural Indiana, there was still a lack of infrastructure. There was a lack of quality road. There was no electricity. There was not plumbing. And you saw farmers feeling disadvantaged and taken advantage of because they didn't have quality product, access to product, and unfair pricing. And somehow those guys with really literally nothing other than a shared need, a shared ambition, and a willingness to work together formed what is now Premier Cooperative, and they did it themselves. And there wasn't much other than a need that created that. And to be what we are today, a company of over $150 million of net worth, and that we have the capacity in crops, facilities, hogs, and all those kinds of things, it's remarkable. You don't get that kind of growth and that kind of staying power if it's not something that's appreciated, and we get rewarded by our success, by our efforts to go back to that farmer. It's a remarkable story to me.
Out in the lobby in the foyer, if you're ever at Premier Ag, you've got some pictures out there that was paintings that Harold had done before we kind of commissioned the new office space after the Premier Ag and Jackson Jennings merger. And one of those paintings is not finished yet, and it's purposely done that way. And what do you think the future looks like?
Well, if we're going to talk about paintings, now you've picked a poor spot or a sour spot for me. There's a painting right behind you.
Oh, no. How do we do this?
No, we didn't.
When we built this building, we actually commissioned a painter to paint what is a cooperative. And it shows harvesting wheat, a community coming together. There's actually a church you can't see because of Sal's head. But to me, it's so much, it visually reflects what we are as far as shared interests coming together to accomplish a shared task in that. Now, as far as the lobby goes...
we're back.
Go stand in front of it.
They took over my room. I'm not bitter.
This is such a nice room. It really is. It told a good story, and now it's different.
It was the threshing room. Yeah.
Now
The thrashing room.
The thrashing room at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, you took over my room. But outside, and again, it becomes interesting when you see the future and what the future might be. I'm very optimistic for the American farmer as well as how the co-op helps that. But you're seeing more and more shifting of concentration of interest, and part of that being in the form of land. And as you get large stakeholders of land, some of those not at all associated with agriculture, what does that mean to a farmer and to farming? Well, again, I think co-ops put themselves in position as we consider our future where we allow a farmer to make sure he has an opportunity and a stake, even if it's talking to someone like a Cargill or a McDonald's, Pepsi, Walmart, whoever that is. How do we make sure a farmer and a farmer's interest, a farmer's return to their efforts are represented? It'd be very difficult to do that if they didn't have a way to negotiate in that shared interest. And so as I look at our future, I think we'll see ourselves more and more perhaps directly being willing to get into processing and those elements that help us be of value to the food channel. I don't think we should be fearful of making those kinds of investments, and make sure what our land produces, what can be produced from a livestock standpoint, those investments continue to be made here in southern Indiana. And again, one farmer couldn't do that, but Premier can.
That's good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One thing, I don't know how to ask this question, I think exactly right, but where has been your biggest source of knowledge as you represent farmers, and that's important to you, that you provide stuff that they can't necessarily provide on their own? Well, you have to have knowledge and gain that on how to guide this company and how to guide the decisions that are made. Clearly, the board okays those. But to get the ideas, where have you been some of your biggest sources of knowledge?
Well, I'll tell you the things that most influence me a different way. First, my Christian belief, it strongly drives me from a decision-making standpoint in how I ethically or morally approach decision-making. I'm certainly driven by my belief and what I am told is good, acceptable, to be above reproach. That certainly is a part of it. I've never been one that's been very interested in management books and these self-help books as far as how to run a company. I am guided a lot by military history. I think you can learn a lot from history, and especially in conflict. I think conflict brings out the best and the worst at one moment. You're forced to express whatever you are. You're forced to express that most in conflict, and we are guided a lot. I am guided a lot by learning how folks approached problem solving, sometimes in the very worst of conditions, in a world war or in a revolutionary war, and that helps guide us a lot. The third one is as you mentioned, the board and employees. I love a challenging environment. I love to sit down in a room and be a part of a discussion. And I hope there's never a formality here. I hope that there's never just a position, but we just sit around a table with shared interest and a respect of one another, and we argue it out. Argument's the purest form of debate.
What advice would you give? I mean, there may be some brand new employees listening to the podcast today, and they're wanting to get started at Premier Ag. And what advice would you give them today?
Well, I would tell a story in that regard a little bit, and I think part of it is, and some people have asked me in the last few years. They said, "When are you going to retire?" And I feel 40, first off, so I'm not ready to retire, but I also know that age and at some point expectation drives that. But I would say that if I ever lose my aggressiveness or my willingness to really act and be decisive, I hope I'm smart enough or someone is wise enough or courageous enough to tell me it's time to step away. Early in my career, I had an example of that has stayed with me through a lifetime, as far as when you let things sit idle too long, you don't address it quickly enough and be decisive quickly enough. And you've heard the story, Sal, but I used to work in an old feed mill, and we had a coffee pot. It was a bun coffee pot, so it was one of these things where, in 45 seconds or so, you get a pot of coffee. That's the plan. And that thing started running slow, like 45 minutes slow. So, and those of us that shared that coffee pot, we started waiting each other out. That we said, I'm not going to fix it, you fix it. And so I suppose it went on for 2 or 3 weeks where we all were waiting for 45 minutes before we got a cup of coffee. Finally, I'm the guy that says, let me fix this thing. Let me find out what the problem is. Well, I was surprised to find that 3 weeks earlier, a mouse had crawled up in that thing, had gotten zapped, and found out it was a coffee filter. But I have learned early in my career, and again, it is a life lesson, but not just coffee pots, but I think for any of us, we need to be bold and courageous. We need to be willing to make decisions, be decisive. I have personally benefited a lot from my competition or from others hesitating, and I be bold and courageous.
Or else live a life drinking mouse filtered coffee.
which I've never drank coffee in a feed mill since.
I haven't either since you told
no,
me. And nor will any of our listeners ever.
We have 2 feed mills now, so I won't be drinking coffee there either.
They're doing spit takes at the feed mills
Absolutely.
right now.
Yeah. Somebody's wondering why that thing's slowing down. So, well, we certainly appreciate the leadership that we get. I think we learn something every day, and the encouragement to be involved in the discussions and the decision making, and it just goes a long way. I feel like that. Yeah, we couldn't be in a stronger position now as we continue to grow, and the opportunities that we mentioned, that several opportunities for employment. We're always looking for good folks to come in and be a part of it. Look for a career. So,
Ryan, that's all I got.
me too. Harold, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
very much. And that's another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies.